Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Before we begin, I want to introduce today's presenters. We have some very special guests on the line with us, including Robin Goldsmith, Health Innovation Principal at Verizon, Stephen Baker, President of Hackensack Meridian Living at Homeval, Peter Cappiello, CEO of Future Technologies, and Rad Sethuraman, VP of Product Management here at Cambium Networks. I also want to encourage everyone to ask any questions that you may have during the presentation in the questions tab on the control panel. But without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to you, Robin.
Thank you, Riley. Great to be here. You can go to the next slide.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Sure.
First.
Yeah, so thanks everyone for joining. I'm going to kick this off with our perspective on what we call connected health. As a little bit of context, my team at Verizon has been looking at the major market trends affecting healthcare for about 4 years now, as well as speaking to our customers and understanding the challenges affecting them. So between those two, large pieces of data, if you go to the next slide, Riley, we really looked at, what are the big challenges affecting healthcare and across the board, people are thinking about, how do I design facilities to be these connected environments? How do I make the patient experience better? This idea of the digital front door, all the technology intersects a patient will have with a facility, whether it's in senior living community, an ambulance, a home environment, all those different, and this, in addition, this notion of anywhere care. Third area, which is top of mind for most healthcare executives, is security. So I really think what we're seeing is more of a rise in making sure security is a interwoven fabric across all of these areas. And then finally, virtual care and how do we make that more streamlined? So with that said, you can go to the next slide, Riley. So I thought I'd start with what is connected health? There's a lot of buzzwords in healthcare. We all know AI, augmented reality, computer vision. I could go on, but really, in essence, when you boil it down to the core, what it really means is continuous and immediate access to information. In essence, real-time capabilities. That is more and more we're seeing that as the expectation, delivering solutions, connectivity in more and more real time. And that's what these networks, that a lot of folks are building, whether it's Wi-Fi, cellular networks, that's what the promise of that really means to the consumers. And as you can see this, I pulled a little stat out here, 65% of consumers expect connected experience. And 8 in 10 consumers see the world as all digital in the short term. And we've all seen that. And so everything, I have to preface everything I say that, we were looking at these trends 4 years ago. Obviously, a lot has changed in the last 3 years with the pandemic, but I think everything, the trends and everything we've seen has been accelerated. So if there's any silver lining in the pandemic is that we've seen 10 years of innovation happen, or maybe even more happen in the last 3 years. So go to the next slide, please, Riley. But with all these new capabilities, technology, connectivity, I think we have to remind ourselves that really at the core, we have to, build everything to make the human experience, how patients, doctors, interact with healthcare in a more human way. I think this connected health will address the major challenges that were put in the spotlight with the pandemic, access challenges, facilities that had, very high demand that didn't have the bed count. What is the other option? The home health environment became, that's a place where patients like to be. Outcomes are good. You're limiting, the risk of infection. So there's a huge rush of pushing connectivity into the home, which I'll touch on later. We obviously saw the lack of, or the need of connecting the patients and their families in a time of need. And again, we're seeing a lot of burnout with our doctors and nurses. So any way we can, leverage technology and connectivity to address that, I think is a very needed thing that will benefit everyone. But again, I think as we approach this, connectivity and technology I think the end goal is to make, as we all want, a more compassionate, human-centered experience. Go to the next slide, Riley. So, the adoption of telehealth really was kind of, a major step. That adoption out of necessity really made folks adopt technology regardless of their age, geography, wherever they were. If they had it, that really opened up the floodgates to, what telehealth means, what digital health means. We know that, usage of telehealth skyrocketed during the pandemic, and the usage is still, it's come down in usage, but it's still remaining. I think the only question mark is, the regulations around that, but all signs point to it being, in our lives moving forward. And I think as the stat shows, number 3, 65% of consumers like the ability to interact in a virtual environment. So I think, as I talk to folks in the industry, we've seen the adoption of telehealth, but now what? How can we make that better? How can we, evolve that solution to make it even better? We know that, the digital native generations or digital first generations expect healthcare to have the same attributes as they see in their retail environments with the likes of Amazon. They want a personalized and easy experience. So that's really setting the bar high for healthcare. So go to the next slide, please, Riley. So, I really think that we're in an unprecedented time in healthcare. What started in the pandemic and coming out of the pandemic has really kicked off, again, this huge influx of innovation in a good way. We're really seeing the transition from sick care to health and wellness care. How do we be more proactive and move away from reactive and really have that continuity of care versus just seeing episodic, engagements with patients. We know that the physical interactions folks have with their doctors, that's still going to be present, but there's also going to be more and more that virtual component. And really, it has to be personalized. Consumers, healthcare consumers, expect, again, the same experience they have in other industry in healthcare. So that's personalized, patient-centric. Everything's going to be enhanced by these technologies, including AI, with the hope that this is going to make the patient experience better, as well as the nurse and doctors' workflows better. And I think all of this is hopefully going to spur the move from fee-for-service to value-based care. Go to the next slide, Riley. So, those are the trends we're seeing. I thought I'd just pull out some use cases that we're seeing in the market and what people are thinking about. We know that everything is, at least for what I see as at a major telecom, the network, the Wi-Fi networks, the cellular networks enable what healthcare is trying to do. So, this is just to enable the healthcare providers to do what they do. But some really interesting use cases with this technology that's enabled by this, more robust connectivity. Something, I see that's, very specific for elder care. Think about intelligent video. So not just a camera that's seeing and transmitting that real-time video, but interlaced with AI to pick up someone's gait to say this person through that AI engine is at risk for a fall in a parking lot, in a room, in a hallway. As we know in, senior care communities, that's a huge risk of fall. If we can do anything to prevent that through technology, that's a huge win. To simple things like how to, leverage this more robust connectivity to enable better, parking check-ins for contactless check-ins, enabled by, what we think of as micro-location. Wayfinding in healthcare facilities has always been a challenge. So, the new connectivity that's more robust, more comprehensive is going to enable better micro-location capabilities so that someone can arrive at a facility, park their car, and then have turn-by-turn directions to where they check in for care all along the way. Piggybacking on that, asset tracking has been a major issue, and we're working hard to solve this. Really, things as simple as wheelchairs being where they need to be. What if nurses and doctors could very simply, through their phone, find where something is, get to it with turn-by-turn directions, know that it's in working order if it's an insulin pump or another piece of equipment, take it out, the asset is then tracked, it's in use, and then when you're done with it, it goes back into the queue. Other folks can utilize that. Something as simple as that is a huge issue. It accounts for a lot of time, the burnout I spoke to earlier. If we can solve for that, I think it makes everyone's life a little bit better. The connected patient room, I think, is something I want to touch on, because as folks are building new facilities, the expectation is the consumers, healthcare, patients expect the same types of solutions in their room as they do in their home. So think of voice applications. If I can't move, I don't have use of my arms, voice capabilities to, call a nurse, order a dinner, turn on the lights, see what's on the menu. Those are all here and now, and we're seeing that being put into, healthcare facilities. But then also, that intelligent video to see if, as I'm lying in my bed, analyzing my body posture, and if my leg falls out to the side, I'm at risk of falling out of the bed. So all these more enhanced capabilities to, really promote patient safety, engagement, and give them the type of experience in that, assisted living environment or hospital room, is really trying to take the best aspects of the technology we have in our phones, in our home, to the patient room. And then on the, there's a lot of folks talking about the mixed realities, augmented reality, virtual reality. What that needs is very, very strong connectivity and quality of service to move that amount of data in more and more real time. So some interesting use cases are, for vets, there's a lot of use cases being worked on leveraging virtual reality for PTSD, virtual reality for mental health, taking folks out of those environments, leveraging that virtual world to change how the brain's really thinking about that current state. So a lot of work being done there. And again, that needs robust connectivity. Augmented reality, we're seeing, and this is my last use case. If you think about augmented reality, a lot of work being done pre-surgical to really, plan out the surgery, leveraging that augmented reality to potentially take the place of 3D modeling. Other use cases are, we know there's a shortage of skilled workers. What if you could put a skilled worker on the shoulder of a less skilled worker so that they could maintain equipment with that skilled worker on their shoulders, seeing what they see with connected glasses, giving them information, direction in real time to kind of extend that expertise, more commonly through the field. Another one I'm looking at is, what if we could enable EMTs to have that same expertise on their shoulders so that they could have a specialist giving them direction in an ambulance environment, for example. So you can go to the next slide, Riley. So the patient experience and this, this idea of a digital front door, we know digital has skyrocketed, primarily because of the pandemic. It's not slowing down. What do folks expect? What are the trends we're seeing? We know that, there has to be a consistent experience across all the channels a patient will interact with a hospital, a healthcare provider. They have to be responsive, provide real-time intuitive information, have to be personalized, and more they're going to be immersive, leveraging those augmented virtual reality environments for multimedia experiences. Go to the next slide, Riley. So I think an interesting stat that's McKinsey put out recently, we know there's a tremendous shift in the amount of money that's going into this connected home. $265 billion worth of services for Medicare and Medicare Advantage could shift to the home by 2025. It's right around the corner. I mean, when I think about it, I think about how do we enable these home environments to deliver the types of care that folks are expecting. We're seeing the rise of hospital at home, which is acute care setting. You're basically standing up a hospital environment in someone's home, and the early data coming out of that is that patients like to be in their home. The outcomes are great. the clinicians are training the staff to really be able to adapt to this very, different type of environment that doesn't have a safety net of additional folks there. So that's something that also requires the right equipment, connectivity to deliver that type of care in someone's home. Telehealth is going to be delivered, as we know, in the home. Purpose-built devices to deliver that telehealth and other remote patient monitoring devices. We're seeing an incredible surge in usage to really deliver that continuity of care in the home so that, clinicians, doctors, nurses, care teams have better touch points with their patients and get more and more real-time data on a consistent basis coming out of that home care environment so doctors can see trends over time, get alerts when something is looking, there's a major weight gain in a diabetic situation that can raise some kind of alarm so that there's not just episodic care, it's more, the continuity is there. So incredible amount of innovation is happening right now, and it's only going to continue. So hopefully that spurred some thoughts, ideas. And with that, I will hand it over to Steve.
Great. Thanks, Robin. It's tremendous to hear from somebody like yourself with some great vision, forward thinking, for what we need to transform the healthcare industry and environment. It's really much appreciated from my end. It's especially interesting to see that someone who's got their hands on the possible development of new sites as well as existing facilities is connected to the team, such as you are, Robin, within Verizon, because this is really the efforts of a team in the sense of developing a lot of the initiatives that you're talking about.
Absolutely.
So I really do appreciate that. So Riley, could you jump to the slides? So at our facility, the Villas, it's actually a licensed facility as assisted living located in Homedale. It's upscale, and we consider it to be in the categories of, in healthcare, what you would see in the hospitality industry of the likes of a Four Seasons or a Ritz-Carlton. So it's best in class, 130,000 square feet. When you benchmark that against other 110 unit facilities, we're actually twice the size in square footage. Really, because we offer a tremendous amount of amenities, as it's indicated in our slides, including things like movie theaters, performing arts theaters, swimming pool, fitness centers, ice cream parlors, and more. You can go to the next slide. The community and the planning that we go through incorporates a lot of the digital things, not all of them, but certain elements of what Robin had referred to. And having the platform, which is a robust network, high-speed internet, wired connections, wireless data points throughout the building, has really allowed us to do so many things, including, streaming movies and connecting to sound systems, which we have throughout the building, using the Sonos systems. Our nurse call systems, which has sensors and lighting and other elements of it, are all incorporated into our digital platform. Next slide, please. So the connectivity is Wi-Fi 6 wireless data access points. We have 65 of them throughout the facility, 120 phone lines. We have pot lines, which we use pretty much for emergency situations, whether it's fire in the elevators and things like that. And we are planning to do more things, including a welcome iPad type structure for every resident, where they would be able to familiarize themselves with the entire facilities, photos, videos, things like that, that would all be representative of a new person moving into the facility. We've considered, doing things with robotics, still under evaluation. And our health program, which we also consider to be very innovative, called Revite Wellness, has a cognition reversal program to enhance cognition elements. And that incorporates a lot of technology, including things like the Apple Watch, which does blood oxygen 24/7, heart rate monitoring, EKGs, as we all know. But very, very appropriate for our program is sleep. And sleep is a very important element to health, especially for cognition. And the Apple Watch, again, achieves that for us with some very, very elaborate analysis of sleeping patterns and the like that we can help address from a healthcare standpoint. Next slide. So we were fortunate to work with Future Technologies and Peter Cappiello. He was instrumental in a lot of the things that we've put in place at the villas. And he and Robin both have been very important team members for everything we do. We are planning more facilities, and obviously we will be raising the bar and incorporating a lot more of our digital solutions going forward. Thank you.
Hey, Steve, you said thank you to us. I think all of us would like to thank you for the opportunity to work with yourself and the team there at the villas, pre-construction, getting the facility off and launched, and then supporting you through that process. We definitely appreciate the opportunity to do that, and also your participation today. The comment you made about the wearables with the Apple Watch is very interesting, and monitoring the sleep and looking at that kind of deep analytic data and then building it into the health routine is, I think that's a real good view of what's possible today, all the way down to that wearable level, and using that data to be useful and helpful to help the patients. So, but definitely thank you to allowing us to do the project and participating today. One other point that you made I thought was interesting is like looking at this community as a healthcare and hospitality facility, I think is a key point that you made there, because each one has different use cases and requirements. And the fact that it's a hybrid environment between healthcare and hospitality, I think you guys did a great job and balanced that. It's a beautiful facility with movie theaters and the pool. But for us, it created an opportunity to kind of work through our client approach. And this slide here kind of captures our 6-step approach. But the first few steps are really the important. Defining the requirements. What is the facility? How large is it? What are the operational requirements today and in the future? We have our innovation center down in Atlanta, Georgia, that we use to kind of pre-test solutions. So we have Cambium solutions that we ultimately utilized at your facility there at the villas, tried and tested in our innovation center in Atlanta, where we have switch infrastructure, we have the Wi-Fi 6 access points, as well as other technologies and use cases where we really use that to incubate ideas. So when we go into production environments like the villas, we have solutions that are tried and tested and proven. The follow-on slide to this, we're going to look at the site survey phase. So if we define what we are trying to do in the requirements, we have proven solutions. it's really important to go on site and look at the facility. What's the layout of it? What's the building composition? What's the density of users in terms of, as Steve mentioned, even down to a wearables level, smartphones, tablets, OT equipment. There's no replacing going and walking the site. In this case, we actually walked the site multiple times to work through the design requirements. And then we moved right to the production environment here. This is a greenfield project that needed IT systems day one or digital systems day one. And then ultimately, once the network is live, we're there to support the villas and Steve's team to have successful implementation and operational sustainability. So Riley, if you could jump to the next slide, I'm going to just go over at a high level on the design side. So I mentioned, we have to go to the facility, walk the facility. In this case, it's a four-floor structure. It has a ground level that's made of masonry, stone, and then the first floor to third floor where the residences are is framed with sheetrock. So building composition is important. This happens to be a picture of the ground level. We chose this image because you could see there's a number of blue dots on the map that are the Cambium Networks XV2 Wi-Fi 6 APs. So those are the standard capacity. Then you can see there's 4 green dots on the topology here. Those are the XV3 Wi-Fi 6 access points that provide higher density to provide more capacity and also device density in general. And the reason we position these here is it's the common areas where there's going to be large gatherings, like the Performing Arts Center, like the dining hall. So we took the best of both worlds with the indoor Wi-Fi access points that Cambium had and applied them in a suitable way to meet the requirements of the building. Working with the villas, we also have some expansion planning where they've pre-positioned additional structured cable. So in the case that the demands increase a bit, we have the ability to then go in and add additional capacity, segment the building differently as the building takes an evolution over time. Software also plays a key function. Instead of just taking a rough dimension of an access point every couple feet, 30 feet, 50 feet, 100 feet, we actually use software to load in the architectural plans and then do a detailed RF design. And by doing that, we were able to take something that would normally, off of a simple dimension, take 100 access points, and we were able to reduce it down to actually 62 access points. So it's about a 38% reduction in the number of access points. That reduces the capital cost, that reduces the installation costs, and then also it simplifies things from an operational perspective. What we've seen over the years is folks install access points, and it actually ends up interfering with itself and reduces the operational efficiency of the network. So we try to find that balance of providing a robust network that's even capable of gigabit plus capacity, but we want to have the RF environment be at a nice distributed basis so that it operates well and doesn't interfere with itself. As we look at more and more dense networks, that's something that you have to consider more and more because everything has to work together. We think we struck that balance here and provided, good value, good initial upfront costs, but then also we have a forward path to be able to modernize the facility to add more density of users and capacity in the future if we need to. Riley, if you could move to the next slide. So that prior slide focused predominantly on the pervasive wireless connectivity. But in addition to that, we had to solve some additional problem statements in this. So pre-certificate of occupancy, there's a requirement to have emergency phone lines. So we use the Verizon connectivity and a data remote appliance to provide emulated POTS lines to support the elevators. There's 2 elevators in the building the emergency phones, and then also the fire alarm system with full redundancy. Those are life safety applications, need to make sure those are solved for. As we moved into the production project, we needed internet service, which we were able to get from Verizon. We're using Cisco for the security layer and routing layer. And then our partnership with Cambium really picks up at the network switch level. We have 10 48-port switches, as well as a backup switch. We have 62 access points divided between 58 XV2s, which are the standard capacity Wi-Fi 6, and 4 XV3s in those high capacity areas, providing multiple different types of networks, guest, operations, nurse call, as well as additional operational networks. And then, still to this day, there's a requirement to have phones. This is a life safety environment. We want to have multiple means to communicate with the residents and provide service. So we worked with Yealink on the voice over IP phones, as well as a few fax lines. So at a high level, this is the solution that we came up with. Again, we very much appreciate the opportunity to work with Steve and the villas. We hope that the network proves to meet all their digital requirements, and hope that we could continue to support them on their future projects as they look to expand this great product that they've created in that blend of healthcare and hospitality. So a little bit on the approach, the design, the solution, and to get into more specifics on the subsystem with the Cambium networks, I'd like to turn it over to Rad.
Thank you, Peter. And, it's exciting to hear sort of the different use cases. Robin, Steve, Peter, all of you touched on this. And, all of these are use cases that are driving patient care and patient experience. And there are not too many things out there that are more mission critical than that. And so what that translates to, and I think, Peter, that is a good kind of an overview that you did on what are the design considerations, because ultimately a lot of these use cases depend on an underlying network to kind of come to life. And the network needs to deliver on the requirements, and it needs to be as invisible as possible, right? It's in the background, it just works. And that's kind of the areas we focus on. I would say, we talk about essentially 3 pillars that kind of drives our philosophy in how we build our solutions at Cambium. When we talked about use cases, and Steve touched on even bringing things like robotics to the mix, right? So there are more and more things that are connecting to this network, more user devices from iPads to the Apple Watches that we talked about. And in the healthcare setting, especially, everything is coming enabled with Wi-Fi. So having the first pillar that we focus on is performance at scale. As you build a network and your needs are going to evolve over time as new use cases come in, the network needs to have the performance headroom to kind of deliver on sort of these high density use cases and support the performance needs as the use cases grow. The second part of it is clearly when all of these things are happening and we looked at all these use cases, there's a tremendous amount of complexity to the team that is responsible for delivering that seamless experience. So we focus a lot around simplicity and ease of use. And the third leg is, obviously, we all have a budget. And so we focus a lot on total cost of ownership. And that includes both, the CapEx part of that investment, but also more importantly, this network CapEx is a day one expense, but then there is an ongoing cost of managing and running this network. And how do we optimize that, right? And Riley, you can build this out. I'm sorry, I think I'm still seeing the opening screen here. Are you already advanced? Yeah. Effectively, from a Cambium perspective, we have this vision of a multi-gigabit wireless edge that brings together Wi-Fi switching, and also some of our outdoor solutions for outdoor connectivity, like our 60 gigahertz CN wave solution, and all of them being managed from a common CN Maestro is our management solution that brings together all of them to give a one network experience. And when you look at, there are multiple kind of building blocks, if I can double click on and what's on the right here. First, waste of any kind, whether it's people, resources, time, really sucks the life of any organization. And like I said, the network, we don't want it to be visible. Anytime it is going to consume time and effort, that's something to be avoided, right? So operational efficiency is something that we focus on. And how do we deliver those simple experiences to manage that complexity that comes in any of these networks? How do we do that is really through more of a driving analytics and insights from a management station, so that network IT admins are going to be very busy and they don't always have the time to go and look at the dashboard. So more I can get synthesized data, more I have things like the network notifying me as a critical event is happening, you need to pay attention because some patients are going to be impacted in their network experience. So that type of capability. Ultimately, the network is used to deliver a business outcome, a healthcare, a patient care outcome here, which means it needs to be an open platform, be able to deliver sort of other applications and solutions that needs to work seamlessly to deliver that, the vertical specific solution. More and more things are coming into the network, right? So IoT is here to come. I mean, the robotics example is a good example of that. And how do we make this network more ready? I mean, if you look in any setting and a lot of the connected home and the connected, patient care experiences that Robin talked about, all means that you need to have the technology to support these varying different devices and things that are coming on the network. And how do we run this network? We can do it the villas as self-managed, and there are other facilities that want to kind of go with the managed services route of employ a third party to run that network. So regardless of who is managing it, we want to make that management easy, because ultimately it comes down to delivering on a service level agreement on the network. You want to deliver on the patient experience, and ultimately it comes down to TCO, the total cost of ownership of running that network. So these are sort of the building blocks that we look at when we kind of look at how do we shape this? What are the next set of capabilities we build into this product? These are some of the guiding principles. And ultimately, it comes down to delivering on what the organization wants to do, what they, in the assisted care living, how do I deliver a better patient experience? How does the network contribute towards that objective? You go to the next slide. The portfolio, and it starts at the bottom with the right size hardware portfolio, right? A broad set of Wi-Fi access points, and Peter touched on this in terms of needing those APs which are within the unit, to having high density APs on the more busy areas where people gather. And we talk about something, we have a capability which we call software defined radios, because what that allows you to do is to customize the network based on the client profile. So today you may have a predominance of Wi-Fi 5 clients, but the technology is evolving pretty rapidly. You're seeing Wi-Fi 6 already there, Wi-Fi 7, people are already talking about it. And people like Apple, Samsung, and other vendors on the device side are going to start evolving that client base. So, but there is an opportunity for the network's personality to kind of mimic what's your dominant client profile. And you don't want to you want to minimize the hardware refreshes that needs to be done every time the client profile starts to shift. So with our software defined radios, that allows you to actually configure that access point through a software interface to kind of match the client profile that you got, so that you future-proof that deployment. And when we kind of look at this wide, and Pete also touched on some of the Cambium switches in the deployment. And when we designed these, we said, how do we make these two work together, in a seamless fashion, so that the switch is aware of kind of what is that configuration that goes on the AP, and we can bring a level of automation to configuring the switches. Because on the switching world, especially, a lot of times manual changes to the network are causes of network downtime, right? There's human errors that get introduced. So the more we can bring in automation to the mix, the better that outcome is. So that's what we focused on when we built our switching lineup as well. So then everything I talked about is managed through a common management solution called CN Maestro, and that gives a lot of flexibility. It can be done as a SaaS offer from Cambium, or this can be run on a server on premises or on your own private cloud. It all delivers, and in addition to the management function, there's a bunch of services, guest access or a multi-tenanted dashboard, getting visibility into what type of applications. How do I prioritize my critical voice applications, for example, in my network? Enabling location-based services, making it an open platform through a little set of APIs, so that third parties or homegrown applications can be bolted on top of the network to deliver that, ultimately that experience, the business outcome that we care about. To the next slide, Riley. So a very quick look at sort of our management interface here. CN Maestro provides you a very hierarchical dashboard. So if you kind of look at the left, the second column on the left, there is a set of networks that are shown. And if you are a managed service provider, then this could be each of those could be one of your customers. But it could be a healthcare or a distributed enterprise kind of a setting. You may have multiple sites, multiple buildings. So all of them show up at a high level. And you can double click and go down to that. Hey, I want to go look at this particular building, this particular floor. I want to look at the switches or APs, or you can go all the way to the device level. And when you start to kind of go down that path, the dashboard on the right is very contextual. It starts to change to see what you're looking at, so that you can really go down, remotely manage this whole network, and get visibility into what the client experience looks like, do some remote troubleshooting so that you can catch those problems before the end user or an application that is using that network starts to see that, right? So get a little bit more proactive with this whole management. Next slide, Riley. And this is kind of bringing it together, more of a summary slide here. But the right size portfolio approach, right? In addition to the high density experience, it's integrating a lot of these IoT devices from, you start to see thermostats to door locks now connecting to the network. And some of them use non-Wi-Fi technologies like BLE or Zigbee. And so we built some of these technologies into some of our access points, so that you can have the same access point service in different use cases over different technologies. We also have the IEC 6061 certification. This is really to drive, this is a certification that mandates some safety and performance requirements for equipment that goes into healthcare setting. So we are also, from an infrastructure perspective, adhere to that. Application experience, and I think we heard about how important it is to have good voice communication, right? Some of the nurse call applications, in a healthcare setting, people are inherently mobile, right? They are moving around and they need to be communicating, and so we in addition to the quality of service we deliver from within the infrastructure, we also interoperate with popular solutions out there we see that a lot in healthcare, so that the task of trying to qualify every time a new release comes up You can deploy with confidence, knowing that interoperability with these critical voice systems is already done. So you can expect a certain level of performance and reliability for those applications. Now, when you have more and more devices coming in, when the network is expanding, it's important to make that process of deploying that network very easy. So zero touch is something that we focus on a lot, and also something we call policy-based automation. I've spoken to some healthcare CIOs. We say, hey, we have a challenge because everything comes enabled with Wi-Fi on them, and the task of making sure that it is qualified, well-defined, it is secure. So with policy-based automation, we can automatically profile what's joining the network and put them on the right network segment, so that there is an IoT device having a vulnerability doesn't expose your entire network. So how do you improve, you leverage automation to both make it simple to onboard the devices, but also keep your network and your users secure. Robin touched on a number of interesting use cases, from wayfinding to connected patient rooms on a location-based services, asset tracking. And so we actually have some of these type of solutions deployed where we have an institution that is doing a BLE-based tracking of their critical assets in their network so that they can find it when they need it. And we also have another interesting use case where there is a facility with which is treating dementia patients, and they give them all a Bluetooth wristband, and that helps kind of keep them track where they are at any given time. So location analytics in general, in terms of where are people gathering, how are they moving through the facility, so you can optimize the experience from that standpoint. So really the network giving more insights in terms of how the facility is being used and how we can deliver some of these location use cases. We touched on cloud management a bit earlier, and also I talked about the third-party ecosystem that we can, because rich set of APIs, so that you can completely use this whole experience of managing this network and getting information out of this network through a programmatic interface. You don't even have to go to the dashboard, right? So ultimately, all of this is really for us to say, this network is mission critical, the use case is mission critical, and how can Cambium help deliver a robust network for healthcare and assisted living? And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Riley.
Yeah. Right.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. And thank you, Robin, Stephen, Peter, and Rad for all of the helpful information. We'll be sharing a link to access this webinar recording via email, so please be on the lookout for that. But until then, enjoy the rest of your day, unless anyone has anything else to add.
Oh, great job, everybody. Thank you, Riley. We appreciate you coordinating.
All right, no problem.
Thank you, Riley.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.